Hi again. Now you have a sense of the duende and what it represents symbolically and what it does not represent. So it is nighttime logic, it is the struggle, and it is the fire, which you can find in art. It comes near only if it has the sense of possibility of death nearby. It is a kind of spirit which inhabits people with charisma and art that is interesting and fiery and earthy and dark. But the duende is not interested in logic and intellect and even university and talent and daytime logic and sweetness. And the duende is not interested in is not an angel and is not a muse. So these are the polite little creatures. So the duende is not polite at all. Remember, dragging its rusted knife blades along the ground. So I've given you some ideas which the duende is about, and some names which are associated with it. Um, and I've given you a couple of example poems, Lorca and Marie Howe. Now I want to read you one more poem, which is included in the batch that I've got there. There's another poem as well by Jack Gilbert, and a couple of examples of books that have duende. Now I want to read from Walt Whitman, who was a 19th century American poet who wrote a book called Leaves of Grass in 1855, which is quite famous. And he's very influential, maybe the first American who became, who was like the father of modern writing, him and Emily Dickinson. So he has these long lines that are almost like the Bible. But he has this poem, which I'll read, which is from Song of Myself, which is very, there's a sympathy for graves, and it talks about how, we're all dying. It has this awareness of death. So in that awareness of death, the sense of duende is present. Now remember, Whitman could not have known about the idea of duende. The idea came much after him. But that doesn't mean that people didn't write with a sense of, what duende is before that. It's just a way of talking about good art, which has always been around. Okay, so I'm going to read this. From Song of Myself by Walt Whitman, Part 6. A child said, "What is the grass?" fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition, out of hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it is the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and remembrancer designedly dropped, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners, that we may see and remark and say, whose? Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. Or I guess it is a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones, growing among black folks as among white, Canuck, Tuckahoe, Congressman, Cuff. I give them the same, I receive the same. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves. Tenderly I will use you, curling grass. It may be you transpire from the breasts of young men. It may be you are from old people or from offspring taken. It may be, if I had known them, I would have loved them, soon out of their mother's laps. And here you are, the mother's laps. This grass is very dark to be from the white heads of old mothers, darker than the colorless beards of old men, dark to come from under the faint red roofs of mouths. Oh, I perceive, after all, so many uttering tongues, and I perceive they do not come from the roofs of mouths for nothing. I wish I could translate the hints about the dead young men and women, and the hints about old men and mothers, and the offspring taken soon out of their laps. What do you think has become of the young and old men? And what do you think has become of the women and children? They are alive and well somewhere. The smallest sprout shows there is really no death. And if ever there was, it led forward life, and does not wait at the end to arrest it, and ceased the moment the moment life appeared. All goes onward and outward, nothing collapses, and to die is different from what anyone had supposed, and luckier. So, with Whitman's discussion of grass, which leads to death, which leads to no death, I'm going to finish my workshop of speaking about the Hobgoblin Duende. And I hope you got a couple of good poems out of this. And I hope that you're able to use this idea of duende in conversations and in ideas of aesthetics, thinking about art. And I hope that it's an inspiration to you that you can use sometimes when you're writing a poem and you think, my poem that I've just written is not very good yet. So how can I draft it and make it better? Well, maybe it needs a bit more duende. Maybe it needs a bit more fire and struggle. Maybe it's too safe and tame. So how can I make it have that? How can I make it do that? Okay, so take care and thank you very much and have a nice day.